Hi, I'm the Asian sensation Kanji. You're listening to Queen's Court.
Hi guys, this is the Queen of Queens Visage talking, and I am so happy to introduce you to the Queen's Court.
Hello, my darlings, and welcome to episode 30 of Queen's Court, Queeny Guides, episode 1. Oh my god! We made it to 30 episodes, can you even? I'm so excited, and I couldn't think of a better way, a more perfect way to celebrate making it to 30 episodes of Queen's Court. Oh my god. Than with this brand new series, Queeny Guides. OMG. I cannot wait to bring this to you. As most things do, it went down in the DMs. Well, maybe not the DMs exactly, but a group text message between my dear friends JPQ and Anthony from Smark to Death. And we were chit-chatting as we normally do, and I was saying to them, oh my god, you guys, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to record. I'm kind of stuck. I don't know what I want. And I couldn't think of how I wanted this to work. And then they came up with this idea, essentially, where JPQ said to me, well, what if, you didn't want to watch WWE anymore? What would you do? And from there, it kind of snowballed. Anthony threw some things in. I threw some things in. And it's really this concept of hashtag Queeny Guides or hashtag let the Queen guide you to other wrestling promotions. Shout out to Anthony for that specific line. I think it's great. It's golden, in fact. So the first things that came to my brain were, oh my god, how do you start watching other promotions? Where should you start? How do you get to these other promotions? Where do you find them? Okay? Very exciting things. One of the best parts about being a wrestling fan is the fact that there's so much content out there, you guys. So much content. It's exciting. It's different. It's fun. There's something for everybody. You may see promotions and be like, nah, it's not really my cup of tea. That's fine. There's hundreds of others to choose from. That's the beauty of this business that we love. So really, I was thinking to myself, okay, how is this going to evolve? How is this going to get together? How is it going to formulate? But essentially what I started to think of was I can have people come on who are, I would say, quote unquote, experts, or not a stan, but a very large fan, promoter, supporter of a certain type of promotion, right? And I can bring them on and I can have them help guide you to something different that you may not have seen before. Or you may have heard about, been curious about, but haven't really taken the plunge, if you will. Haven't really gotten in super deep. Now, some of these promotions I will have watched myself, and others may be totally new to me. And that, I think, is the beauty of it. So I have an entire idea about what this is going to be about. But essentially, it's that. It's how do we guide down a new path when something that we love just isn't cutting it anymore? What else would we do? While we wish them well and we hope them, that they improve, we may see them later. But now I think it's time to take the journey. I think it's time for the Queen to guide, with some help, into a new wrestling world. For the listeners of Queen's Court, for the people on wrestling Twitter, it's time for us to broaden our perspectives, you guys. It's time to reach out into this wide world of wrestling and find something new, find something different, see if it resonates with you. This episode, this very first one, had to go to my homeboy, my other half of the hashtag Queen of Pup Connection, JPQ. And I bet you might have an inkling, if you know me and you know JPQ, what promotion he might be helping to guide you onto. So I'm going to shut my trap, babies, and without further ado, strap in, because it's time for episode 1 of Queeny Guides with JPQ. All right, people, here we are. As promised, I hope you're strapped in, because it's time. It is time for the very first installment in the Queeny Guides series. And as I told you in the intro, he's here. One half, the better half of the Queen and Pup connection. My pal and yours, JPQ. Welcome, buddy.
Thanks, Queen. I'm excited to be here. I don't know about better half, but certainly the louder speaking of the two.
Well, I mean, that's probably true.
Mm-hmm.
But you're back. You're on Queen's Court again. We're in a different castle, but here we are. And this idea, as I was explaining in the intro to the people, really came out of our group DM, or group text message, if you will, with that fuck, Anthony. Just kidding. Love you, Ant. Not really, but no, I do. Yeah, I do. But I'm still going to call you that fuck. So this was born out of me being like, guys, I'm stuck. I'm in a rut. I don't know what to do. And you had been hearing my, my complaining and my being disenfranchised with the big company WWE. And I'm like, oh my God, you guys, I don't know what to record. I'm like so disheartened. I'm like out of the game. And here you guys come with this great idea. And we kind of formulated it in our group text. And here we are.
Yeah, the White Knights come to the rescue again. Yes, that's very pompous, but you know what I mean.
Well, you were my White Knights in that scenario, that's for sure. But, it couldn't have gone any other way than to have you first. Because I feel like this is a promotion that we're going to talk about today that you're very well known for in terms of supporting and watching and telling people about it. But it's also a promotion I feel like people are like, yeah, I'll check it out, JPQ. But like they don't.
That's a fair way of putting it. Like they like the hype.
Yeah.
But the actual okay, I'm gonna go sit down and commit some energy to this. It doesn't always seem to quite get there.
And I don't know why, but we're gonna dive into it today. We're gonna try and figure it out. But first, we have to tell the people what it is. So JPQ, I'm going to let you take it away with this first kind of introduction. What is this promotion, if you were to try to explain it to people that had, maybe never watched it, never maybe heard of it, but don't really understand it?
Yeah, so the promotion that we're talking about is Stardom, right? #watch Stardom. And it's an important promotion for various reasons. Number one, it's an all-women's promotion. So if you're a fan of women's wrestling, if you like women going out there and wrestling their asses off, this is a promotion for you. If you enjoy simple, basic storytelling that has a beginning, middle, and end, and short-term booking and long-term bookings of the like, Stardom's a promotion for you. If it's something where you're tired of the convoluted complexities of narratives being told that are never paid off on, Stardom is the promotion for you. It's one of those things where it really boils down to wrestling doesn't have to be complicated to be enjoyed or to be understood, right? And there's guilty pleasures in this world when it comes to wrestling, and you just have to kind of jump in with 2 feet into something that you're not accustomed to seeing night in and night out on your television set. And you will find a promotion that resonates with your fandom that you haven't seen before. In this instance, when it comes to my fandom, Stardom was that for me. It is my guilty pleasure. So when people talk to me about Stardom, they go, well, you don't seem to be very critical of this promotion. Look, there are going to be things that you can be critical about. But sometimes you just got to turn that analytical side of your brain off and say, I'm a wrestling fan. I just want to enjoy wrestling. And so if you enjoy the act of wrestling, and you find yourself being your beliefs being suspended over time, or disbeliefs being suspended over time, well, then Stardom might be the promotion for you. In this instance, it is for me. And so if we're going to talk about a promotion and get people to be who are interested in it, to try to get them invested in it, this is a good one to start with.
I think so too. Having known you for as long as I have, we continuously talk about Stardom, and you're the one that got me into Stardom. And granted, I don't watch it as much as you do, but I do watch it, and I do try to catch myself up, so at least I'm like coherently understanding what you're talking about for the most part, right? It's just a little slower for me getting into it.
Sure.
But I think what I'm really curious about is, why did you seek out Stardom, or did you seek out Stardom, and what made you really start watching it in the first place? Was it the fact that you were being critical, as you had mentioned before, of other things, and you wanted something else, something new and fresh, or is that what you were looking for, or did you stumble on it by accident, or what happened?
Well, so I stumbled across it on YouTube about 5 or 6 years ago. I mean, timeline wise, it's a little blurry because we weren't as involved in the wrestling internet wrestling community and or wrestling to the level that we are today, right? Podcasts and social media and things like that. I mean, back in the day, you would just kind of find what you liked and you followed through on it. For me, it's something where I've always enjoyed a good technical story being told in the ring, right? To me, storytelling or professional wrestling is storytelling through work rate, right? And to not be able to have commentary kind of fill in the gaps, and which Stardom, in the way that I watch it, you don't always get that commentary, right? Stardom-world.com does a great job of putting on the matches so that you can see them in a digestible format, but you don't get the Samurai TV, because that's where you'll find it. You don't get the Samurai TV intros. You don't get the commentary that comes along with it. It's very plain Jane in the way they present it, which is they're going to do a quick promo. They're going to come to the ring. You're going to get the pageantry of the introductions, which, again, aren't over the top, but there's music and there's streamers and there's fun outfits and things of that nature. And then you're going to get a match. And then after that match, you might, depending on the whether it's a co-main, main, or undercard, you might get a little promo afterwards. And that's all you're going to get. And so when I saw that, it's so different than what I'm conditioned to watching with the likes of WWE or WCW back in the day, or even ECW on some level. It is so stripped down to the bare essentials of what wrestling can be, that I found myself really kind of enjoying that presentation, because you didn't need a lot, and your focus was on the in-ring work of these women, and what you realize is that they execute at a high level. And so an appreciation for the work rate came when I started watching Stardom, and then as it's kind of developed over the last couple years, and some people have left and some other people have come in, and then they've groomed talent underneath, we saw stars being built. We saw high execution with stiff, hard matches in the ring. And we saw simple storytelling, right? And those three things combined to come across on what I was watching without it having to be overproduced, right? Although they put on a lot of shows, 5 shows a month or so, you don't get the oversaturation feel, because you don't always feel like you have to watch every match, or you don't always feel like you have to watch a 3-hour pay-per-view to understand what is going on. The way they break it up on Stardom-world.com into single matches over the course of a week allows you to come in, pop out 15, 20 minutes at a time, 5, 10 minutes at a time, depending on if you're what position in the card you're watching. And it gives you that appetizer of wrestling that you're looking for without having to commit to a full course, if that makes sense.
It does make sense, and I'm curious if that plus the appreciation for the actual wrestling, because they do showcase it. It's such a different vibe and feel for those who haven't seen it. You're exactly right in explaining it. It's like stripped down. This is what it is, and we're gonna watch this wrestling, and it really changes the way I think you see wrestling and you view wrestling, especially for women. Part of the thing I was so shocked about was how stiff their matches were. I was like, oh my God, and how talented they are and how young they are. It's kind of wild. So I was wondering a little bit about like how did all of that like keep your attention? What was it specifically that was like, yeah, this is going to be it. Like, I'm here.
I think for me, it comes down to two things. One, it's a very Japanese style, very strong style base. So if you're a fan of New Japan Pro Wrestling, there's ties between the two promotions with the way that they wrestle, right? That's number one. Number two, the discipline of the women in the ring translates to the viewer watching. Like, they take what they do in the ring very seriously. Right. They may not be serious characters, but they understand that when they're in that ring and they're presenting their craft to an audience, that they're going to give 100%. There are no days off, right? I think that lends itself to my fandoms as well. More importantly than either one of those two things is the fact that when you sit down and you watch this, there's a focus on the roster as a whole, right? Like whether it's faction based and you're dealing with 4 factions and how those factions go against each other, or how the internal dynamics of the faction work. It's very streamlined. It's very basic. And because of that, you don't have to think too hard. So your focus really becomes more on how they go in and execute more than, okay, well, the continuity side of the storytelling.
Now, for the storytelling aspect and the way that they present their storylines, and you've mentioned the factions, for people who like New Japan, that has a very heavy influence as well. Another similarity that I found, I was like, oh, faction-based. Okay, I like that. We're on teams, but not really. So this is interesting. How would you explain these factions, maybe like their personalities and their way of telling their stories? Because I find that and their characters, I think, to be one of the most interesting things about Stardom. Because even the heels aren't really heels, I guess. I'm not sure how to explain it.
But there is no good or bad in Stardom.
Yeah, right. That's it. Yeah, there's no good and no bad, but they're like, there is a bad guy faction.
Sure. Yeah, they blur the lines. You have your heels, you have your faces, but really you don't have either. And what I mean by that is that it's a family-based promotion. Mm-hmm. It's fun. It's palatable to all people. Right. It's something where you can sit down with your kid and you can watch it, because it's not going to be over-the-top grandiose in any type of way, outside of some 08 time matches. The 4 factions that we're dealing with are Queen's Quest, Stars, Tokyo Cyber Squad, and 08 Tai. Now, Queen's Quest is the best way to look at Queen's Quest, and I give all the credit in the world to Bowling JD over at the Red Leaf Retrocast, the way that he presented it. And they're like the Yankees, right? They're your hired guns. They're always going to be vying for the tag team championships, the trio championships, the Intercontinental or the Wonder of Stardom championship, or their main championship, the World of Stardom championship. And whether they're vying against other factions for it or they're fighting internally for it, it's all about respect. And that if you're in Queen's Quest, you're expected to perform at a high level, right? Not just with your character, but then with your wrestling acumen. And so good, bad, internal strugglers or not, you can be the number 1, you can be the number 2, and you could be battling over their their white belt, for example, their singles title. And there is no animosity. It's expected of us to go for this title, right? Right. And so there's a respect feud there. At the same time, you have Stars. They're kind of like your poppy. They would be associated with like being faces, right? They their focuses tend to be more on the mainstream fandoms of Stardom. You know, that's where Mayu Iwatani is. That's where Tam Nakano is. That's where Arisa Hoshiki, people that have gone out and created names for themselves outside of Stardom in various other types of martial arts, whether that be shoot catch fighting with Arisa or karate and pop culture with the way Tom has been. You know, they tend to be more of your bells of the ball is probably a good way of putting it.
I like that.
Yeah, and then you have Oedo Tai, and they're the closest to the heels that you have, and they can have some heelish antics. They do a little bit of throwing people across the ring. They'll take it out into the crowd. They've been known to hang people from time to time, and the reason I bring that up is because it's happened 3 or 4 times in the last 2 years. So, you know, that becomes a staple of the faction over time. But even when they're doing it, you know, it's like it's aggressive, but it never lasts too long, and it's never the finality of the match. It's always just a part of the match as they go on. But at the same time, you know, there's comedy elements involved with Natsu within Oedo Tai. You have some of their younger trainees. There's a senpai-kohai relationship between the leader and her training and mentoring everybody underneath of her, no matter the status. That there's a respect level within Oedo Tai and chain of command that they focus on. So again, you can find positives and negatives, and they bring a lot of you know, affable qualities to a heel faction, right? The newest faction, Tokyo Cyber Squad, which was created earlier this year, they tend to be, in my opinion, the land of misfit toys, right? Their focus is on inclusion, bringing everybody in, whether you don't fit in the Queen's Quest, Stars, Oedo Tai narratives. We're going to bring you in under this international army type of feel. Our leader is sweet and psychotic, you know, and we're going to come out with water pistols and guns and show you a very regimented way of being successful, but we're going to do it in a fun, lighthearted way, because at the end of the day, we don't take ourselves too seriously until that bell rings. And that's a good balance of fun, gleefulness mixed with an undertone of you know, just serious badassery, I guess is the best way of putting it. You know, where they know they can be quirky because when they're in the ring, they're going to put you through the ringer. So interesting dynamic like that. And again, you can find in every faction someone to like, someone to hate. You know, so the good versus bad narrative isn't typically as easy to spot as in other promotions.
Yeah, that's the kind of cool thing about it. And when I first started watching Stardom, I was like, where are the bad guys? Where are the good guys? You know, it's your training. You're used to that.
You're conditioned.
It's a great word. You're conditioned to expect these kind of things. And I was like, this is not happening. I kind of like everybody. Okay, what's going on? But I just enjoy the different characters and the way that they present themselves within these factions. And I'd say you were talking just now about Tokyo Cyber Squad and like how they can be a little quirky and weird because when they get in the ring, things are going to go down. And that reminds me of Hana, who just won the 5-star Grand Prix. What a look that girl has. Oh my God. We've talked about her for wrestling fashion, but
yeah,
that's one that you'd see her and you're like, wow, you're very like interesting to look at. This is cool. You have a really dope outfit and you have like the gas mask and I'm confused by your hair, but I love it and it's pink and what's going on? And then she gets in the ring and you're like, oh. I mean, she's so talented. And that's the cool thing I found about the stuff in Stardom. It's a lot of hard-hitting matches. It's a lot of the unexpected. And that's something, sounds stupid to say it again, but I wasn't expecting to be surprised by these factions and the way that they work together. And while they're still in factions, you're right, there's still that expectation that, yeah, we're going to fight for belts and yeah, we're going to do what we're going to do. But they still have that camaraderie within their own faction, which I think is really unique. I haven't seen another wrestling promotion that does it quite like Stardom does.
No, and you know what? It gives them something to do when they're not committed to a storyline. You know, to have Stars versus Queen's Quest, for example, in a 3-on-3, just on a card for the sake of having it, it allows a baseline of storytelling where you don't have to think too hard, right? Like we as fans tend to we tend to overanalyze when certain people are going against certain people and how this all works. Well, in Stardom, if you're not outside of like their Cinderella tournaments, their G1 style 5-star Grand Prix, their tag leagues, things of that nature. If you're not in the co-main or main event in a singles match, or if you're not vying for a tag title, well, then you're just part of the roster, and your job is to go out there and execute week in and week out at these, what could be class. I mean, they're all house shows in a sense, right?
Right.
So when you have like a Saki Kashima and a Tam Nakano teaming up within Stars to go against Momo Watanabe and Azumi, you don't need to flesh out a story. It's just faction wars, right? It's just factions going against factions to flesh out the rest of the card. And something as basic as that is all you need as a fan to keep yourself invested.
Yeah, and I think you're right. And it gets too complicated elsewhere. It doesn't always have to be something crazy going on. And it's nice and refreshing to have that type of storyline. And I find it also interesting the way that they have their belts. This is the one thing that when I first started watching, I was like, okay, JPQ, what does all of this mean? Why are they all different colors? I don't understand what's going on. But there's so many different ones. They have the World of Stardom champ, the Wonder of Stardom, the Goddess of Stardom, the Artist of Stardom, which I think is probably my favorite. The high speed one, which people who watch AEW, Riho, right, is the current high speed champion.
She is.
And they have a couple other ones I can't remember off the top of my head, but they're shaped like stars, but they're different colors. So like for people who don't understand their belt system, we know that the World of Stardom champion is the big one, right?
Yeah.
What would we say is the one right after that? And that's the red belt.
So the red belt is their number one. That's their
Right.
world championship, right? The World of Stardom champion.
Mm-hmm.
From there, you have your Wonder of Stardom championship, which is your hashtag white belt, right? That's your Intercontinental, right? The reason I like to use colors to associate with them, one, it's easier. Instead of going World and Wonder and Artist and Goddess and like that has a tendency to be a little confusing.
Yes, it is. Yes.
But the Intercontinental is associated with the white strap, right?
Right.
So, when you talk hashtag white belt, it tends to be a little bit more palatable for people that are learning. From there, you have your Goddesses of Stardom or championships, which is your tag teams, the black belts. And then you have your Artist, which is your trios, your Artist of Stardom champions, and that's your light blue, your baby blue, your light pink, your baby blue, and your orange titles. And again, they're all the same in the sense that they're big stars with the buckles on the sides. But when they're walking to the ring, because you're not always going to get a trios match, but they always come out with their titles.
Yeah.
Or they do a lot of multi-champions. Right, Joshi Wrestling is known for this. That if you're one of the top tier, well, you could be the tag champ, you could be the World of Stardom champion, the overall champion, you could be a trios champion, and you could be, a Wonder of Stardom champion. So when they come out and you could visualize the belts just based off the straps, it lets you know as a new fan whether or not these people should be taken seriously or not. So in any instance, whether it's time for a match or not, they represent and they wear those championships with pride. And so when they come to the ring, although it might not be a trios match, and it's just a singles match for whatever reason, that this person's a champion within Stardom. And they do a really nice job of keeping those people elevated.
Yeah, that's really cool. And the one that Riho has now, the high speed, is that like I don't know how I would say, like the cruiserweight belt, right? The high flying, or like your what does Will Ospreay have there? Oh my God, my brain.
The junior heavyweight.
The junior heavyweight championship, right? It's like the high flyers, the really quick in the ring, hard hitting. Is that what it's like? Is it similar?
Sort of. So a lot like the cruiserweight from WCW, or the junior heavyweight, or the light heavyweight championship in a WWF at the time. It's not like those in the sense that it's for high flyers, but it's a different style of wrestling, right? These
Oh.
matches are fast paced. There's a lot of chain wrestling involved. There's a lot of pinning combinations countered into other pinning combinations. It's a lot of like, I always likened it to when I started watching it as if you go back and you watch the old Dean Malenko versus Eddie Guerrero's, right?
Oh,
In
okay.
the first 10 minutes of that match was just trading offense back and forth and countering out of that offense. And they'd stop and the crowd would appreciate it and they would applaud, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a high technical level of mat wrestling. Well, that's all these matches are, and they only last about 5 minutes. And so it's a lot of back and forth. It's a lot of quick counters. There's a lot of evasive movements. There's a couple pauses in between, and then it's cheeky finishes through pinning combinations or through catching somebody on running knees. And it's fluid. It's very fluid. It's a style within Joshi that is not represented in most wrestling around the world.
Another reason why it's so unique, and it's another thing that I'm like, oh, well, that's interesting, and I'm hard pressed to find that exact thing elsewhere. I could see it in Zack Sabre Jr. sometimes when I watch him wrestle. He does a lot of that chain stuff. He just had a great one with Sonata in the G1, but it's not something you see on the regular, I feel like. And I can go to one promotion and be like, this is where I see it all the time, right? And so that I think is really special. But in terms of like their championships, a lot of people feel some type of way about their championship, like the championship belts and the champion themselves. Like they should be a like reigning champion for a long time.
Sure.
Or I really like the way New Japan really respects their belts and they only defend them a couple times a year and blah, all that stuff. And a lot of people have issue with places like WWE where the title flip-flops quite a bit. So in terms of Stardom, do they have that type of long reigning champions where they defend like a long time, or is it quicker? How would we categorize that?
It depends. I'll tell you that just like with any successful promotion, it's a mixed bag, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you might only get one or two defenses out of a trios champion before they switch the belt into another faction. Right, you might get 5 or 6 runs with the tag team titles before somebody else gets an opportunity to run with them. There's enough prestige there to keep you invested, and they're smart in the sense of making sure that the titles mean something. When it comes to the World of Stardom Championship, the red belt, as well as the Wonder of Stardom Championship, the white belt, the singles titles, there's an emphasis on how they build these matches, and the matches that are built are all predicated off of in-ring promos at the end of a defense. So for example, if Arisa Hoshiki, who won the Cinderella tournament, took the title off Momo Watanabe and then just went through the 5-star Grand Prix, like she wanted Kagetsu because they tied each other in the 5-star Grand Prix. They ran to a time limit draw. So she calls out Kagetsu. When that happens, we have Avery, who's over on a tour, come out and say, well, you can have her, but I'm not done with Japan yet. I want to match first. Right. And then now Arisa's got a decision to make, like, well, I want her, but you're calling me out. So I'll beat you and then I'll focus on Kagetsu. Right.
Right.
Simple storytelling. Sometimes after they win a match, they call out their next opponent, or sometimes somebody comes into the ring and challenges, right? There are no month after month, type of story arcs that are built in Stardom. It's you and I are going to fight. And then if I beat you, then who do I want to fight next? Or somebody's going to come in and say, I would like to challenge you. And it's all built around respect based off the work rates and matches that other people are having. So you don't always know the direction in which it's going, but because it's built out of this respect type of format, any challenger is believable, right? If you just put on a fine 3 matches and you have a little bit of a momentum behind you, and Arisa, who has the white belt, I'm just using that as the example, comes off a victory, defending the title, and you get in the ring and you challenge and she accepts. Okay, well, you don't need a story at that point. You just know 3 weeks from now when they meet up that this is going to be those two going after each other. On the same level, take that exact same scenario, but now Arisa has taken notice. of your momentum. And she says, I want to go against you next. The story sets itself up from there. Typically, their storylines aren't overly complicated when it comes to their titles. It's all about who's winning, who's not, and who do I need to beat to elevate my position within the eyes of the fans to carry this belt to the next level, right? Because I have the title, I need to challenge good people for people to take me seriously as a champion. So if there is no dodging opponents, there is no running away or cheeky finishes. We're gonna get, when we're in that ring 1-on-1, the better woman's gonna win, right? And they tell such a smart story with and again, like, there's nuance to it, but because they're in there and they take it seriously, and their focus is on having a good in-ring match. Whoever ends up winning benefits of taking the momentum and taking that title into the next spot. So right now we're seeing B. Priestley get over with the World of Stardom championship. We see Arisa, who won the Cinderella tournament, beginning to find her legs with the Wonder of Stardom championship. And they really do a good job of utilizing these titles to help build new stars. And as somebody who has watched world title reign after world title reign and it not get the person who has it over, it's really refreshing to watch because it's so simple, but it's so effective at the same time.
Yeah, because I think some of that is my problem with, like, WWE, for example. They're not building anybody else. The people that they're going through these belts with are the same old. And when they do build it, a lot of it I feel like has been by accident. Take Kofi, for example. It was supposed to be Ali in that match. Ali got hurt, Kofi got put in, and look what happened. That's lightning in a bottle.
Right.
They didn't plan for that,
No.
And it just happened. And that was something they did so very right. But at the same time, for me, where are their new stars? How are we getting these challengers? A lot of it is just, well, this person is very high profile, they're going to get a title shot. What I love about Stardom is that exact thing you were trying to explain before and so nicely did, how it's based off respect. Okay, I'm going to fight this person, I'm going to fight them. If I'm winning, now what am I going to do? And either someone challenges me or I challenge them. And it's all like, it's not equal because, right, someone's a champion and someone's not, but it's believable. I can understand why that champion would say, yeah, I'm down, like, let's go. It makes it more, I don't want to say legitimate, but it makes it more real in that way. Like, wins and losses matter here. The way you perform matters because what you do next and how well you perform in whatever it is can set you up for future things, which I find to be extremely satisfying. Like, look, this girl put her effort in. She won this. Now what is she going to do? And okay, she's going to get a title shot. Great. And you can get behind that a lot more, I feel like, than, what we're getting elsewhere. And that's not just WWE. There's other places that do it too. I'm just using that as the easiest example.
Yeah, and it doesn't just stem from the championships either. It's an easy one to gravitate towards, but for example, Saki Kashima and Natsu Samir had a great little arc of 3 matches over the course of 4 months that were all comedy based around Saki Kashima's theme song. So Saki comes to the ring, and she has a great theme song. It's my ringtone. It's the best theme song in all of wrestling. And as she's coming out to the ring, Natsu's in the ring singing it, like, over the top, dramatizing this song, and says that she's going to steal it from her, right? And then they have a match, and it's very comedy oriented, and Natsu gets the win, and now Saki's pissed, and this goes into the battle of the theme song for the next time they meet up 2 weeks later, in which they have a very similar type of comedy match to where, Saki can win, right? And then they take that into the 5-star Grand Prix, where now it's not about the song anymore, but now it's about, I'm going to steal Saki's finisher, right? And I'm going to be, this is now the battle of of Revival, which is the one of the moves of Saki Kashima. It's one of her finishers. And so it's just like this very lighthearted, fun, easy way of telling a story based around comedy wrestling. So now we're getting nuance, right? It's not just heavy hitting, back and forth championship caliber matches, but we can bring some levity to the undercard by having, these fun little stories. And it doesn't take a lot, right? You just need a reason to buy in, and they do a very nice job of streamlining that for the fan, so that you're always kind of in the know of what's happening. And then they go out there and they perform it in the ring, and it works, right? It's executed the way you would hope that it would be.
Yeah. And speaking of buying in, another thing that I find delightful and also surprising for a lot of people is those that have come out of Stardom into the wider world of wrestling that totally surprise people that have no idea that this is where they came from. And I was hoping that you could name drop a few just to drop some knowledge on them about who came from Stardom that they may recognize on their television every week.
Sure. I think where it's important to start is with WWE, right? So if you're a fan of Io Shirai in NXT, she was the face of Stardom. She was the ace of Stardom for the better part of 6 or 7 years. She started Queen's Quest. She brought in Mayu Iwatani and built her as a star in 2016. I mean, she was there before that. She's been there for like 9 years, but built her into a main event star in 2016. And they have a trilogy of matches back and forth that is just, it's just, a beautiful piece of storytelling over the course of the year. So if you're a fan of Io Shirai, she got her start. She didn't get her start, but she got known because of her work in Stardom. Kairi Sane was Kairi Hojo. She was also part of Queen's Quest. She was in the faction with Io Shirai. She comes from the world of Stardom. If you're a fan of Tessa Blanchard, she was there in 2016, and she did a run with Stardom as well. If let's sticking with NXT for a second, Shayna Baszler, right? When Shayna Baszler left MMA and she was working the independents, she found herself over in Stardom and did a couple tours over there to work on her in-ring ability. And she was made a household name in Japan because of Stardom. There's a couple of like Asuka, for example, on the main roster, not really part of Stardom like full force, but she's done a lot of work with Stardom and partnerships within Joshi Wrestling. If you were a Stardom fan, you knew who Kana was. And then when she got signed, she went, obviously became Asuka. And she has some background in Stardom as well. Xia Brookside, right, from NXT UK. She's done a lot of work in the recent last 12 months or so, coming over and doing Stardom matches as well. If you're an AEW fan and you find yourself fancying Bea Priestley has been working not only in Stardom for the last couple years, but because of the partnerships with Stardom and other UK outlets, we see a lot of those types of talent come over. So Sadie Gibbs, for example, Bea Priestley, Jamie Hayter have all found a niche within Stardom that is translated into performances worldwide with different wrestling promotions. So, if you're a women's wrestler, or if you're, a female wrestler, and you have the opportunity to get a tour with Stardom, you're ultimately elevated in the eyes of bookers around the world, because Stardom doesn't offer tours to everybody, but then more importantly than that, because of the way they run their day in and day out operation, and everybody trains every single day to make not just the people that are there better, but then the people underneath of them, the stars that they're building underneath, make them better. Those people take that skill set, and when they leave Stardom, they leave with more than when they came. So again, down the line, there's a whole bunch of wrestlers that are pretty prominent roles across a lot of promotions that have some type of foundation based out of Stardom.
Which is wild. It's wild when you think about that. Stardom has its fingers spreading out with
Yeah.
all of these ladies, and it's really great. And like Shayna Baszler, that shocked me. Like when I started to really get into it and I looked back, I was like, excuse me, what? It just was so surprising to me. But now that I've been watching it for a little while and I see all the people that have come out of there and I see the talent that's there now, it baffles my mind why people don't watch this promotion. With all of the names that you just said, never mind what's there now, but people who are fans of all of these wrestlers you just named, why don't people watch Stardom, JPQ?
Well, it's not as accessible. I mean, it's the most accessible Joshi promotion that you can get, but it's still not as accessible, number one. You know, it has its own streaming service, but there are no live streams.
Right.
Everything is posted within the 72 hours to 4 days after the matches go up. That's number one. Number two, you have to use Google Translate to get through the login, and there's been some issues with the login depending on what kind of browser you use, where you're putting in your credit card information and it's telling, and the Google Translate says expiration date year or expiration month and year, and you put it in, it doesn't accept your card, and you have to kind of know to flip those two to get it to work because Google Translate is screwing up how it works. Your confirmations all come in Japanese. Your monthly bill all comes in Japanese. So, you know, there's a security issue there with, like, there is no security issue, but like it feels that way because you can't read it. You know what I mean? Like, you don't know what the hell you signed up for.
True. Yes.
You know, and so, but they're still at their infancy with regards to their streaming services. Having any type of over-the-top streaming service is a win in 2019 because, again, it just sets you that much more apart than everybody else. On top of that, you know, at the end of the day, Stardom still is compared to a lot of worldwide wrestling promotions. It's still very small, right? It's
sure.
The foundation and the work rate and the talent might exceed expectation for their size, but they're still a relatively small company, right? They're a very small fish in a very big pond. And so they get overlooked from time to time. You know, plus, if you're accustomed to certain production value, or if you're a fan because of the pageantry and the soap opera-ness of professional wrestling, well, Stardom doesn't really lend itself to that because of the, you know, the finances of the business, right? Like they run Shinkaba, geez. They run Korakuen Hall. You know, they run these areas that if you're a New Japan fan, you might know these arenas, but there might only be 500 to 700 people in it, right? They're not coming out with the big sets and the big lighting and the pyro and. No, like it's way more basic than that. And then you combine that with the fact that if you're going to watch it and you're not in Japan or you're not streaming Samurai TV, which is like I don't call it a local station, but it's like a TV station out in Japan, then you're not getting any type of backstory in Japanese. You're getting a quick promo from each competitor that's English subtitles. You're getting them walking to the ring in their outfits and the music playing. You get the streamers, which is always fun, right? They're very good with their streamers. You get a high quality match, and then you might get a promo afterwards. And that start to finish might only be 15 to 20 minutes for the co-mains and the main events, but then your undercard might only be a 7-minute video, right?
Right.
And it's all broken up to be digestible over time because of the way they upload. So there is no fluidity to watching match after match after match. The way we are accustomed with like the WWE network and pay-per-view stylings of watching start to finish an entire show, right? It breaks it up. And so it's a weird watch, right? For the people that have committed to it that haven't gravitated to watching, I get the same thing. When it comes to work rate in the ring and the execution of the act of wrestling, nobody does it better, especially from a women's wrestling side. But they'll talk more general than that, and they say, "Damn, these women go out there and they perform, right? Men compared to men or women, they perform." But it's not for me because there's just I'm so used to the pageantry and the production value that I just lose that sense of whimsy, you know, when I watch. right? So it's different strokes for different folks in that regard. I challenge people that go into watching it to say, like, if you're a fan of the art of wrestling or you're disenfranchised with the type of wrestling you've been watching, Stardom can get you back on that horse because these women go out there and they perform. If you're a fan of pyro and of music and characters that, you know, are completely over the top because that's what you're used to growing up, well, you're not going, and like you value that more than the in-ring work rate, well, then you're not going to love Stardom the way that I love Stardom, right? Like, so to put kind of not an analogy, but to kind of bring a visual to it, it's the difference between, if you're a WCW fan, it's the difference between watching a Dean Malenko match and watching a Ric Flair match, right? Take the in-ring work out of it, but the way the Four Horsemen used to come to the ring and the music that would play and the big fancy robes and the aura and the promo skill sets of Ric Flair back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and the way he sold what professional wrestling should be, and the pyros going off behind him, and there's this whole grandiose way of looking at things. It's fantastic, right? And it's palatable, and it's something that as a wrestling fan, you know, it's 1/3 of what we're looking for. Dean Malenko didn't have any of that. He'd come to the ring shaking his wrists, you know, curling his wrists, and when he got in there, you just knew you were going to see a highly technical match, right? Stardom lends itself more to the Dean Malenko type of wrestling, where it's there's no thrills, there's no frills, but we're going to go in there, we're going to beat the shit out of each other, right?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. It's without the pomp and circumstance, but still with some pageantry. There's a little bit of something, but it's not the same level. It's just not. And if you're expecting that when you watch Stardom, I think you'd be doing yourself a disservice, because you're not going to get what you expected and you're not going to want to watch it. I think you have to go in there with a very open mind to understand that it's going to be something completely different than what you're used to, but give it a shot because of the people that you're going to watch. I think that's the real sell, at least for me. It's the women's wrestling that we get when you watch Stardom. So why should people watch Stardom right now? What about Stardom should interest the wider world of wrestling Twitter, wrestling podcasting, or wrestling fans?
I think it's twofold. That Stardom specific, because again, I can talk about work rates all day,
Sure.
Right? But if you're a fan or you're missing in your fandom, watching a promotion build new stars, then Stardom is a promotion you want to check out because they do an excellent job of building new stars. That's number one. Number two, if you're a fan of complete rosters start to finish, right? If you find that you're a little disenfranchised because you have your main event, your mid card, and your lower mid card, and depending on who's fighting who when, you can kind of predict who's going to win that match, whether it be a Raw, a Dynamite, or a pay-per-view. If that person has less status within the hierarchy of the roster, well, then that person's not going to win that match, right? In Stardom, because there's so much parity, and they can utilize the factions, and they can utilize different styles, to fight one-on-one or tag teams or on the trio side, because everybody's so talented from top to bottom, on any given night, anybody can beat anybody. And so the unknowing booking decisions, or I should say the unpredictability of the booking finishes is something that as a fan you can gravitate to, because you're always on the edge of your seat on who's going to win.
It's awesome. I don't know if you could put it any better than that, which is why you're here. Before we close out, who should people look for specifically in Stardom? Who are the big stars right now that people should have their eye on? Like, we're all going to have our own that we attach to. We talked about it earlier, but
Sure.
Who are some of the people that you need to be like paying attention to in Stardom, in your opinion?
Well, it's so hard because, Stardom is in this bit of a renaissance. They're probably out of the renaissance now, but with Io leaving and Kyrie leaving, they there was a lot of question marks at the back end of last May, 2018, of who's going to take on being the standard bearer. Who's going to take over as the ace of New Japan of Stardom? Who's going to rise to the top? Because you have a lot of young talent, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have people that are teenagers. You have early 20s. Again, if you're 26, you tend to be on the older side within Joshi wrestling, within Stardom. But they've had a lot of people kind of ring the bell, kind of grab that brass ring over the last month to 16 months. So, to sit here and say, well, who's somebody that you should know or you should pay attention to, it's tough because there's a little bit of everything for everybody. If you're completely new to Stardom, I would tell you to start with Mayu Iwatani, because she's been a little cross promoted with Ring of Honor and the Women of Honor Championship through WrestleMania weekend last year. So if you're a fan of, if you were at Supercard, or she had a match at the Supercard against Kelly Klein. If you're a Ring of Honor fan, you might have seen her in the past, and she really is the flag bearer, right? She is what I always said was the face of Stardom. Momo Watanabe, the leader of Queen's Quest, she's the ace now. She's taken over for Io Shirai. She's somebody worth investing your time into. She's 19. Again, depending on birthdays, maybe 20 at this point. But she's really kind of leveraged her status within Queen's Quest to kind of be the leader once Io left. She had a great run with the white belt that she took from Io, and then ultimately defended it 12 times, and she really put herself in a good position. Hana Kimura is the new star, a signing somebody that they've had working with them. There's a lot of history with her and her family. Kyoko is her mother, started Oedo Tai. She just won the 5-star Grand Prix. She's got a great look. She's got a Western look. But she's just got one of the best characters going in Stardom right now. You have Utami Hayashishida, who came out of their academy graduating class last year and just completely took the world by storm. She's only 21 years old, and she's going to be an absolute ridiculous competitor. She's already in the main event picture. She's big, she's tall, she's strong. She has a torture rack bomb. She goes in there and she puts people on punishment. There's a lot of things that she does well, and she's going to be around a long time, and people are going to know who she is. Arisa Hoshiki has that martial artist, or the mixed martial arts background. She does the Brazilian kick, that little question mark kick, and kicks people in the face. She has running knees. She utilizes her past history in catch shoot fighting to her advantage to tell a different type of story in the ring. You have Kagetsu, who's not only their trainer for everybody underneath of her, but she's been a standard bearer there for 10, 11 years now. She's the leader of Oedo Tai. She does the mists. She does the 450s. She was their red belt champion for 9, 10 months before losing it to B. She's somebody that's always going to go in there and put in great matches and lead these younger performers to the promised land over time. And then finally, you have Konami. And Konami is 22, 23 years old. She's the only student of Asuka, and she runs a very similar type of offense, a lot of strikes, a lot of submission-based wrestling. If you're a fan of Asuka and you kind of want to see what one of her pupils, her only pupil, is doing, go to Stardom, #Watch Stardom, because that's where Konami is, and she's doing great work as well. Again, there's just a lot of good things that there's doing. There's a lot of good styles. If you're a fan of fast-paced wrestling, you got Azumi and Starlight Kid and Riho and Death Yama, who are running that style for the high-speed title, back and forth. Like, there's just so much different, or there's so many different styles in Stardom that, if depending on what you're a fan of, you can find somebody to gravitate towards.
My favorite part about this whole thing was that you listed so many people.
I can keep going. You want to talk
out.
Jungle Kiona and the underdog story? We can do that. You want to talk about the blue chipper and Hazuki, the wild heart, and her coming up through the ranks? We can go that route. If you want to talk about a constant professional, who with a little bit of aloofness to her. We're talking Tom Nakano here, and the way she brings the stuffed animal to the ring, and her karate background is utilized in every one of her matches. Like, there's so many different routes I can take this.
I know.
We talk about these people, but at the end of the day, their goal is to go in there and put on an entertaining show, and they succeeded with those shows week in and week out. And again, if you're going to spend money on a subscription-based wrestling service, there is no better bang for your buck wrestling content, volume of content for dollars spent than stardom-world.com.
Man, they should partner with you, JPQ.
I've been trying.
I know you have. It's true. But this is why I wanted to start this series after you guys kind of put the bug in my ear about it, because that's how I found GCW. That's how I found Stardom. Is somebody was like, dude, like, you need to watch this. And I'm like, I don't know. And like, no, you need to try. And look at how my fandom has changed in the past 6 months because of that. It's opened so many doors and so many possibilities. And that's all I really want. I know that it's not going to resonate with everybody. I know it's not going to be everybody's favorite thing. I know people aren't going to geek out about it like we do, or you do specifically for Stardom. It's not going to be everyone's cup of tea. But that's cool, because at least you're trying. If right now you're just unhappy with what's generally happening around you, there are so many other amazing promotions with such great talent that I feel like do not get talked about enough, and this is one of them.
Yeah, and I think to your point, getting into a new wrestling promotion it's confusing, right? Mm-hmm. Like, GCW does one of the best jobs because there's usually no build. It's just a showcase of different wrestlers and matches, right? Mm-hmm. And if you're a deathmatch person, or you're a comedy wrestling fan, or you like the big, beefy, super hefty weights going after one another, or you're a fan of a certain wrestler who just ends up being there that night, like, you don't need build. You don't need to follow a story. Stardom's a lot like that, right? You can jump in. Mm-hmm. The way I tell people to get into Stardom is, ask for a couple match recommendations. They can be from me. They can be from anybody. Check out those matches on YouTube. Check out those matches on Daily Motion. Learn some of these people's names. Find somebody that you gravitate to. Then if you're going to jump into stardom-world.com, you have a foundation in which to build off of. And as you start watching through the shows, you're looking for the people that you recognize, and along the way you'll start picking up the nuances of everybody else. And what you'll find over time is, once you understand the entire roster and the dynamic between the factions, it's like jumping into outer space, right? There's this little bit of a learning grace period that you kind of have to trudge through, right? Mm-hmm. Your senses are different, the promotion's different, the presentation's different, and you're learning all these wrestlers all in a different language. Yep. But then once you understand it, boom, off to the moon you go, because the wrestling is going to be good, and now it's about backfilling the character development side. And you get to that point, you'll find something in your fandom that'll be satiated through Stardom.
And as for me, Hana's my girl now. I found her and I was like, yep, that's the one. I like Momo too. And I love Kagetsu and all that. But Hana, there's something about her, man. That 5-star Grand Prix changed my whole mind.
She's got an aura to her. She comes out, she sings Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, and then she beats your ass. It's an amazing character in the way that it works. Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird the way it works. Exactly right. Was I going to say? There it is. # Queen of Pup Connection. And what better way to end? JPQ, I can't thank you enough for coming on today for the very first episode of Queeny Guides, a series starting with Stardom. No better way to begin. And I know that you agree. No better way to begin than Stardom. But I want to thank you again for coming. And please tell the people where they can find you, as if they don't know already, but they need to know again.
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, thank you, Queen, for having me back. It's always a pleasure and an honor to be on Queen's Court. I like this Queeny Guides. I'm excited to see who you bring on for other promotions, and I'm excited to learn something along the way for promotions that I may not have the time to focus my energies on right now. But given the opportunity to have a discussion about them, might find my way into my catalog of watching week in and week out. So I love what you're doing with regards to # Queeny Guides. For me, you can find me, one half of the # Queen and Pup Connection, on no particular angle every single Wednesday, talking anything and everything in pro wrestling. We focus on, one certain aspect of the last week or so, a storyline, a topic, news related, promotion related. We find something and we kind of expand upon that, and either we speculate out or we talk about the world that is. And we try to switch it up every week, right? There's a lot of wrestling out there. There's a lot of people not talking about certain types of wrestling. It's important that, as fans, we diversify our portfolio as much as we can. And I hope that No Particular Angle, which kind of the name suits, can inspire some people or motivate some people to check out something that otherwise they may not have known that they would be fans of. So I appreciate you taking the time. As far as Twitter, at Big Paws on a Pup, as well as at NPA Podcast is where you can find me talking anything and everything. #Watch Stardom.
#Watch Stardom. And if this didn't convince you, pals, I don't know what to tell you. But we're out. And as always, be kind to one another.